This is what we do to outsiders who don't know their place, Officer Rick snarled, yanking the rope tight with a theatrical flourish. The rough cord bit into the wrists of the older black man, binding him to the lamppost in the center of the town square. A small crowd had gathered, their phones raised, watching the public spectacle of an innocent man being humiliated by the local police. Rick and his partner Dave believed they were the heroes of their own small town story, teaching a lesson about power and fear. They had no idea they were walking directly into a trap set by the very man they sought to destroy. If you were as stunned by this opening and you want to see how this incredible story of justice unfolded, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now because what happened next left everyone speechless. If you stand against prejudice, type yes in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. Samuel, a man whose 52 years of life had been spent in the relentless pursuit of justice, was no stranger to a difficult assignment. For 3 decades, he had navigated the labyrinthine politics of metropolitan police departments, commanded respect in state-level investigations, and earned a reputation as a man of unwavering integrity. So when the state prosecutor's office offered him the position of police chief for Precinct 7 in the small, insular town of Oak Creek, he knew it wasn't a peaceful retirement plan. Whispers of a corrupt local department, a culture of bullying and abuse, had grown too loud to ignore. Samuel, a respected black man with a career built on truth and fairness, was the agent they sent to get a first-hand look. His journey to Oak Creek was intentionally low-key. He drove his own car, a 10-year-old nondescript sedan, and wore a simple collared shirt and slacks, the uniform of an ordinary man. He wanted to feel the town's pulse, to experience it without the shield of authority. As he crossed into the town limits, he saw a police checkpoint ahead. 2 officers, Rick and Dave, were on duty. The moment they saw his car, their casual stance shifted. When he pulled up, Rick took one look at Samuel through the window, saw that he was a black man, and his expression hardened. "Pull over to the side," Rick ordered, his tone dripping with condescension. Samuel complied, pulling his car to the shoulder. Rick and Dave approached, their hands resting on their belts. "What's a black man like you doing in Oak Creek?" Dave asked, his tone laced with suspicion. "Just passing through on business," Samuel replied calmly, his hands visible on the steering wheel. The officers exchanged a smirk. "Business?" Rick scoffed. "We don't have your kind of business here. You look lost, old man. Did you take a wrong turn off the interstate?" "No, I know where I'm going," Samuel replied, his voice even and steady. Dave leaned in, peering through the window. "I bet that car isn't even yours, is it? Looks like it's seen better days. Did you find it on the side of the road?" "It's my car," Samuel stated flatly. "He's got a real city vibe about him," Rick said to Dave, loud enough for Samuel to hear. "And that doesn't fly around here. Our kind of people look a little different." "Let me guess," Dave added with a theatrical sigh. "You're a rapper or something? That's the only way you guys get money." Jerome kept his cool, simply repeating that he was in town for business. But they weren't finished. "Get out of the car," Rick demanded. "I will not," Jerome replied, his voice firm. "You have no probable cause to order me out of my vehicle. You're going to get out of the car, or you're going to get a ride downtown in the back of this one," Dave shot back, pointing to his patrol car. Knowing he had to let the trap spring, Jerome slowly opened his car door and complied, stepping out into the cool air. As he exited the vehicle, they began to pat him down. "Get your hands off me!" Jerome protested loudly, his voice ringing with a deep, frustrated authority he had to consciously suppress. "This is a violation!" Ignoring him, Rick rummaged through Jerome's pockets, his movements deliberate and invasive. He was looking for a reaction, for any sign of a struggle, but Jerome remained still, his fury simmering beneath a calm exterior. Finding nothing, Rick let out an exasperated sigh. This wasn't going as planned. The officers looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between them. "We got a suspicious person report on a man matching your description," Dave lied loudly, for the benefit of a couple of cars that had slowed down. "We're going to have to detain you until dispatch verifies." Rick then pulled out a coil of nylon rope. "Just a temporary safety measure," he announced, his voice booming. "Don't want him running off now, do we?" They dragged Jerome to a nearby lamppost in the town square. The humiliation was public, theatrical. Rick tied his hands behind the post with a theatrical flourish, making sure the knots were visible to everyone. Jerome's protests were met with dismissive laughter. He knew this was a deeply disturbing show of power, a public punishment meant to send a message to anyone who dared to challenge their authority. He reminded himself to stay calm and let them continue their self-destruction, knowing full well that every one of their actions was being documented. Just as they were basking in their moment of triumph, a frantic voice crackled over their radio. All units report to Precinct 7 immediately for an emergency briefing. The new chief is on his way and demanding to meet his team. Rick and Dave exchanged a look of pure irritation. Their moment was being cut short. Grumbling under their breath, they untied Jerome in a rush, their previous swagger replaced by a frantic energy. "We'll deal with you later, old man," Rick muttered as they jumped into their patrol car and sped off, the siren wailing into the distance. Jerome stood there for a moment, letting the silence of the square wash over him. He straightened his shirt, dusted himself off, and walked back to his car. He drove to Precinct 7 and walked in just as Captainson was finishing his speech to the assembled officers. "Give the highest level of respect to the man who is about to walk through that door," he was saying. "He has driven a long way just to be here today." The door swung open and all eyes turned. Rick and Dave, having just arrived, were still grumbling in the back, but their voices died in their throats when they saw the man standing in the doorway. It was the old man from the checkpoint, the one they had just tied to a lamppost. He wasn't in uniform. He was still in the same wrinkled shirt and slacks, but his presence was different. He carried himself with a quiet, powerful authority that filled the room. Rick and Dave's faces, a moment ago filled with a lingering smugness, went completely pale. The color drained from their skin as the reality of the situation crashed down on them. A low murmur rippled through the other officers, a confused mix of recognition and disbelief. Samuel walked slowly to the front of the room, his gaze fixed on Rick and Dave. He didn't rush. He let the silent, agonizing moment of recognition linger. He stood beside Captain Johnson, who looked from the man beside him to the two terrified officers in the back, finally putting the pieces together with a look of dawning horror. "I'm Samuel Jones," he said, his voice calm and authoritative, cutting through the stunned silence like a knife. "And I'm your new police chief." The words hung in the air, a final, undeniable truth. The murmurs in the room turned into a stunned, collective gasp. Samuel then turned his attention to the rest of the officers, his gaze sweeping over each face. "I have spent 30 years in law enforcement, working in the biggest cities and the most complex investigations," he began, his voice gaining momentum. "I've seen the best of what we can be and the worst. My first impression of this precinct, however, was not from a file or a report. It was formed an hour ago at your town's border. Two of my officers accused me, a black man, of being a troublemaker, and then publicly humiliated me with a trumped-up reason to detain me." He looked directly at Rick and Dave, his eyes unyielding. "I'm not here to make friends," he stated, the words like a heavy stone. "I'm here to clean this department up. Rick, Dave," he continued, his voice dropping to a cold, razor-sharp tone, "you are both terminated, effective immediately, for abuse of power, falsifying evidence, and racial discrimination." He then pulled out two termination forms already signed and handed them to a shell-shocked Captain Johnson. "This kind of behavior will not be tolerated here. We are here to serve, not to abuse. My job is to clean this department up, and if any of you think you can continue to operate this way, you'll be next." Slowly, Rick slid from his chair to his knees, his face pale and slick with sweat. His voice was a thin, trembling whisper. We didn't know. We didn't know who you were." Dave, his bravado completely evaporated, scrambled to join him, his hands clasped together in a pathetic imitation of prayer. "Please, we're sorry. If we had known, we never would have done any of that. We swear." Their words hung in the air, a flimsy shield of excuse. The man looked at them, a slow, humorless smile spreading across his lips. "You're right," he said, his voice a low rumble that filled the room. "You didn't know who I was. You didn't know that my name is Samuel. You didn't know that I'm a husband, a father, a son. You didn't know the work of my hands, the thoughts in my head, or the strength in my heart." He took a step forward, and they flinched. But here's the thing, he continued, his tone hardening like steel. You didn't need to know any of that. You didn't need to know my title or my bank account or the people who answer to me. You only needed to know one thing. I'm a man. His voice rose slightly, but it was all the more terrifying for its lack of shouting. Your "if I had known" is not an apology. It's a coward's excuse. It tells me that the only reason you regret your actions is because of who you think I am now, not because of what you did to a fellow human being. And that, gentlemen, is a far greater failing than the first. He looked at the two men, still on their knees, and his expression was one of profound disappointment. You weren't sorry for the cruelty. You're just scared of the consequences. If you believe in the powerful message of this story, that every person deserves respect regardless of who they are, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel.